but I'm now going to tell you a little story about moonshine. This story is called Diamond Eyes, and it's in a book of stories, Appalachian stories of Eastern Tennessee and Western North Carolina that were collected by Dr. Randy Russell, I better get this right, and his wife, Dr. Janet Barnett. So I tell this story tonight with their permission and actually their encouragement. Well, okay. Folks say that more mason jars are sold in Newport, Tennessee than in any other place in the world. Now, I hear by the audience response that they may know what's coming. Now, the jars were not used to put up tomatoes and beans much. Stokely Brothers had the corner on that market, and they used tin cans. No, these mason jars were used to hold and transport moonshine, white lightning, corn liquor. It was made under the cloak of secrecy back in hidden mountain coves, and usually after dark. Anytime the moon was full was a good night for making shine in the southern mountains. And most of these shiners, these moonshiners, were putting their final batches in because it was the autumn of the year. Now, the one exception was a clandestine, year-round operation in the vicinity of Piney Mountain, Bee Tree Knob, and Rocky Top, southeast of Newport, almost in North Carolina. Now, there was a little country church that was built along a beautiful little creek, and there was a young circuit-riding minister riding by. His name was Oakley Davis, and he set eyes on that little log church and thought that would make a fine place for a revival. And he planned 6 Sundays of spirited preaching, followed by a protracted meeting at Thanksgiving. So he sent the word out among all the cabins and the little settlements all up and down the creeks and even back in those narrow hidden mountain coves. Now, Oakley was planning his activities, and he thought, what shall I talk about? And he had heard about the moonshine making. Now, Oakley was a young man, but he had a little bit of smarts, and he knew that there was a lot of information included in gossip, that it was considered to be the women's lore, just current information that far surpassed the information that you needed to craft some soup or a pie. So, the Sunday night after meeting, and this had not been a good meeting because all the women in the community had come, but there weren't many men. And Oakley had spent a lot of energy in exhorting the women to bring their husbands to meeting, and because he was afraid of their souls suffering eternal damnation and told them that. So after this Sunday night supper, he offered to help with the dishes. He was in the kitchen wiping plates, and he asked the lady of the house, how come the men didn't come to Sunday meeting? Well, the lady thought a minute. I think maybe she was thinking, should I spill the beans or maybe the shine? But she finally did, and she said very simply, it's a ghost, the one they call Diamond Eyes. He comes up in that barren ground, up the path there, what goes around the big laurel thicket. Well, says Oakley, I don't know if I believe in ghosts or not, but even if I did, I wouldn't see how one of them would keep a man from coming to Sunday meeting. Well, the lady thought again, and she was thinking, I guess I'll tell him a little bit more. So she said, it has these big, bright, shining eyes, and it's enough to scare a man what goes up the trail on a Saturday night. Well, said Oakley, I can understand why a man might want to avoid a ghost, but I still don't understand why I'd keep him from coming to Sunday meeting, I must say. Well, preacher, there's more. The men go up that path to Wilson Still. It's the only one that's a cooking this time of year, and a man might go up there on a Saturday night should he have the inclination and have him a thirst. Well, Oakley thought to himself, I'm beginning to understand now. And the lady went on to explain that the men would traipse up the hill and they'd sit around and they'd drink with all their friends. And then they'd come down the trail as a group, and there would be Diamond Eyes standing tall and terrifying by the only headstone in the burying yard. And they would turn around and they would skedaddle themselves back up to that still. They'd sit around swapping tales till morning came. And of course they'd be mighty tired by then, wouldn't they? And they wouldn't want to go to Sunday meeting. They'd be in their beds catching up on their sleep. So Oakley said to the lady, "Well, we will see about that. You tell those men to come on down the trail on Saturday night like they always do, and I'm going to put an end to this Diamond Eyes business, and then I'm going to save their souls for their mamas and their grandmammies up in heaven." So he put together his plan. Most of that week he laid up in the corner of a barn down the hill, and he devised this headdress made out of turkey feathers. And this was part of his idea, his scheme, because he thought, I'm going to show those superstitious fools a thing or two. I'm going to show them something that's scarier than Diamond Eyes. And then they'll put all this aside. Because he truly thought that the men had simply thought up all this Diamond Eyes ghost stuff so they would have an excuse to keep on drinking. Okay, Saturday night came. Oakley Davis rolled up 2 candles in a white sheet, tucked it under his arm, picked up a pan that had a couple of burning embers in it, and he traipsed up there to the graveyard and put all that stuff behind the headstone. And then he hid himself in the woods and waited till he heard those men start to come down the trail. And here they came. They weren't as sober as they had been earlier. And they were stumbling and they were fussing and they were talking loud, and he heard them coming. So he hurriedly put on that turkey headdress. Now that was very difficult to do. This was an awkward piece of home-done work. It was 7 tiers of turkey feathers tied together with cotton string and wax. You could just imagine how beautiful that was. And then he tied that sheet around him so that it covered him from the neck to way over his feet and dragged on the ground. Then just as those men were coming, he lit those candles. He held them out in front of him at arm's length and at eye level. They would serve as his bright and shining ghost eyes. He would be a taller, whiter, scarier ghost than Diamond Eyes ever thought about being. What's more, he could take to howling anytime he felt like it. Now, he had planned that when those men saw that, he would throw his costume down and catch hold of them before they had a chance to run back up the trail, and he'd save their souls and invite them to the Lord's business on Sunday morning. He knew his plan was going to work. Well, the men came, and he was ready. There he stood with his candles. And here came the man in front. All of a sudden, he grabbed his chest in a paroxysm of terror, and he pointed over toward Oakley. And he said, "Lord of mercy, Lord of mercy, there's 2 of them out there tonight." Well, Oakley, he turned around fast to see what the man was pointing out behind him. His sheet twirled out, it tripped him up, and he stuck his right foot into that pan of burning embers. And then Oakley let out a scream of his own. Ah! There was Diamond Eyes, those eyes shining at him, taller than Oakley was. He was knee to knee with a real live ghost. Well, those men took off to running, but like I said, they weren't as sober as they were earlier, and 3 of them fell right in the middle of the path trying to get turned around, and the rest of them most of the way up to the still when Oakley brought those candles in too close to his eyes to keep Diamond Eyes from bearing in on him, and that headdress caught fire. About the moment that the hem of his sheet caught fire, that headdress roared into a huge ball of flame that lit up the entire area and burnt every stitch of the preacher's hair right off. And he was shaking his foot, and he was hollering and screaming, and he danced out into the path, shaking, but he couldn't get the pan off of his foot. He began to yell, "It's me, Preacher Oakley! I'm on fire! Help me fast!" Well, two of the men of the three had managed to stand up, but they fell over again. They were laughing so hard, and then they heard the others beginning to return. Because Diamond Eyes had never talked before, they couldn't imagine what was going on. Well, there's Diamond Eyes still shining there, those bright, shiny cat eyes watching everything, what was going on. Well, the third man, he jumped up and ran over to the side of the path, kind of sideways like a crab, and he picked up a broken off branch, and he started swooping at the preacher's foot, trying to knock that burning pan off of his foot, and his shoe leather had ignited, and he didn't hit the pan. He struck Oakley on the ankle, and he cracked it. Oh! Oakley was really screaming and hollering now. The man swooped at him again, and this time he knocked the pan off, and it flew in the red embers just like a shower of light through the woods. Well, Oakley kicked off what was wrong, what was finished with his shoe, and he started to run. Well, one of the men that came back said, "What's going on here?" And the other one said, "It looks like Preacher Oakley has done caught the Holy Ghost, and Bill Banner's trying to beat it out of him with a stick. Why, he's done knocked the preacher bald-headed." Well, the bald-headed preacher was running down the path, lickety-split, fast as he could go. And he stuck that fiery foot into the first creek he come on, but he didn't linger. Well, obviously, the revival plans didn't go as planned. And folks in the area of Beetree Knob and Piney Mountain and Rocky Top, they never saw Pastor Oakley Davis again. But they sure talked about him for a long time. Now, Diamond Eyes, if you believe what the locals tell you, he's out to show up in the woods at any time in the dark night, and if he does, you might as well sit down and drink a spell, because nothing known of can scare that ghost away.